Mike Sossi, and I'm privileged and honored to be Ron Paul's state campaign chairman. Dr. Paul is running a top-tier finish in the Iowa caucuses and a resounding second place in New Hampshire. 55,455 people saw his name on that ballot and punched the button. With your help, this momentum is going to continue through South Carolina, into Florida, and on to Nevada. Last time Congressman Paul was in South Carolina, it was up in Spartanburg for the debate. Yeah, that was the one where he got 89 seconds. He's going to get all the time he wants. In May of 2007, Ron Paul was here in Columbia at the Clover Center. He introduced himself as the 10-term congressman from Texas and the champion of the Constitution. That was 2007. And now look how much more we need someone to be the champion of the Constitution. Dr. Paul, one of his opponents in the last debate, turned to him and said, "Let's ask our constitutionalists." Remember when he said that? Yeah. What a compliment. What a compliment. That's what they think of him. It's wonderful. Recently, another one of your opponents, Dr. Paul, paid you another compliment. He called him dangerous. It's like they're feeding us this stuff. So, it's wonderful. I pray that it's true what they say. First they ignore you, and we know how that feels. Then they attack you, call us dangerous, attack us, but then we win. For the press, the Columbia headquarters is at 2965 North Main Street, Columbia, South Carolina. It's open Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 9 p.m., and Saturday, 10 to 6. That's for the press. Now, please help me welcome our modern-day founding father and champion of the Constitution, Ron Paul!
Today, I have a daughter-in-law, Peggy. And granddaughter, Linda. Thank you so much for coming out. We did have an exciting meeting last night. Anybody watch TV last night? That's great. It's pretty amazing how sometimes if you're in second place, they talk about the first and the third place. Last night it was a little bit different. They had a little harder time avoiding the real conversation. Last night, Romney didn't have a victory, but we had something very, very special. We had a victory for something very important to this country. We had a victory for the cause of liberty. That is also the reason the crowds are different, the enthusiasm is different. Somebody told me, I wasn't there, so I can't verify it, but they said The governors, he had a good crowd out there, a lot of enthusiasm, but he left, and everybody else left. Well, 2 to 3 hours later, we had people there still, having a real good time and celebrating. There's just so much enthusiasm, it keeps growing. It was mentioned by Mike about 4 years ago, we were much smaller in numbers, and I always talk about, being tyrants, irate minority that leads to charge. But we're not so small. We're not so much a minority. We're marching on. The numbers are growing. They grew exponentially in New Hampshire, and they're going to grow continuously here in South Carolina. They started the poll, and of course, they decided one poll, or they didn't make a poll up. Sometimes they try to do elections by polling. Of course, the poll they cited was I was not up the top here in South Carolina. I said, yes, but you haven't done a poll since last night. So we're on the move, and it isn't only because you have a candidate, but we have an issue. We have a set of principles that we are going to defend, and this is what motivates people. It motivates every one of us because we're doing it for a very special reason. It's not just tomorrow or the next week. What we want to do is reverse the trend of this country for not only a few years or a few elections. It's a reversal of probably 100 years of circling in our lives. The great thing is we need something different, but we don't need anything brand new. But we need to go and find out what we were told to do to run this country. They wrote a little document called the Constitution. So this message is resonating now. It's necessary. A lot of times I'm asked this. I know it's different now than 4 years ago. Well, the country is different, and the world is different, and they're starting to wake up, and they're starting to realize those things that we had talked about for so long, and you were so much aware of, that we had a messy financial system, a messy banking system, and we had these bubbles forming. Now everybody knows about it. But I think the two most important things, over and above the whole issue of liberty and, our Constitution, is the fact that this campaign, in the last year especially, even though it's been going on for a lot longer, we have had two issues brought to the forefront, which we cannot ignore, we must deal with if we want to get things back in order, get the budget balanced, and get a good economic system. The one issue, of course, is a different foreign policy. We don't need to drain our resources overseas. We need to policy of the founding fathers and the foreign policy that's permissive under the Constitution. That is non-intervention, mind our own business, and have a strong national defense. The Republican Party who thinks that if you spend less money on child health care, that might be conservative. But if you spend less money overseas, that's conservative. If you spend more, it's supposed to be conservative. Why isn't being conservative spending less money everywhere? National defense, which I'm worried about too. I had a little bit of experience. I spent a few years in the military in a tough time, at the peak of the Cold War. There is reason to be concerned on how you cut. The magnificent thing about cutting the military expenditures carelessly overseas, invading countries we don't need to invade, sending foreign aid to countries that don't deserve it and we don't have a right to send it. It's a stronger national defense, not a weaker national defense. And say, well, if you don't vote continuously to go to war, continuously for all these vets, no matter what. Don't distinguish between defense and just military occupation. But guess what? You probably have heard which candidate gets the most money from the active military duty people. So it's obvious that being a constitutionalist and a conservative and not wanting to waste money overseas, that the Constitution is very, very explicit. That is a federal function. It's not a state function. It's a federal function that have a strong national defense. And it can be done and not shortchanges this country in any way whatsoever. But if we continue what we're doing in foreign policy, which literally in the last 10 years of these wars, we have expanded our national debt by $4 trillion. Now, what is the solution to this? Are we going to get wise people in Washington all of a sudden say, well, this way this country, but not this country, this do this and this wrong this country? No, what we need to do is say that once again, this country should never go to war unless the war is declared, win it, and come home. You might not have heard about it at all, but I want to make sure you know that another big issue for this campaign has to do with the monetary system, having to do with looking at the Federal Reserve and auditing the Federal Reserve. Because when they call me dangerous, they're calling you dangerous. The Federal Reserve considers us a danger because we're going to break up their monopoly and all the bailouts that are planned on Wall Street and all the things that they do. The philosophy and lies of the Federal Reserve and the central bank, and it gives them the benefit of the doubt. A few of them there probably are not. They're probably well motivated. They're just very confused on economics. But with the whole idea that when you run out of the ability to tax the people because they'll go broke and they'll resent it, and you run out of the ability to borrow money because interest rates go up, countries do this. All the countries in the world are doing this now. They think they can continue to just print currency forever and create wealth. And all it does is literally destroys wealth. It not only eventually destroys the wealth because it destroys the currency, in the meantime, it does show special interest. The destruction of a currency undermines the middle class, and the wealth of the middle class goes to the wealthy. And, of course, they get control of the government. And then when the bailouts come and the monetary system works, guess who gets bailed out? The people who had been making all the money when the financial bubbles were being formed. What happens to the middle class? Not only does the middle class shrink, they become poorer, they lose their jobs, and they lose their houses. And then we end up with an educational system where we graduate maybe more people, but they end up, they can't get jobs and they owe $1 trillion. This dependency on the federal government to take care of us from cradle to grave, whether it's education or medical care or whatever, it doesn't work. And I think here in the last 4 years. It's been happening gradually all along as the emphasis grown on the freedom message. In the last 4 years, it is dramatic. The financial crisis has hit. The people now, a large majority, not only are the military tired of all these wars, but the people are waking up and they realize not only is it harmful to so many families on what happened by sending troops back and forth and back and forth, but also financially, how it contributes to an economic crisis. Because when you think of all that money that is spent overseas, they say, well, what would happen if you just quit spending it? Wouldn't that hurt the economy? No, that money would go to the people. And the people. Very obviously, the issue that's on the minds of most Americans, people I talk to, it boils down when they look at it just in a superficial way of what they're most concerned about. It is the economy and jobs and inflation and the future of our economy. So even those who have jobs and seem to be doing well, they also know that there are some serious problems and they're not overconfident. Oh, this will clear up. This is a mild recession. It'll be over in a little bit of time, like the government tells us. But no, it's 4 years now. There's no sign that it's really ending. The world is involved in a financial crisis, and all they're doing is printing all the currencies. But they're still depending on you and your dollar. They're saying that ultimately, the dollar has to bail out everybody, and they've been doing it. Right now, we've made promises to Europe. The banks are on the ropes because they have bought up debt in Spain and Italy and also in Greece. And we, in a way, are backing them up because our banks have branches over in Europe, and nobody wants the banks of Europe, and our banks to go under, and they've and not only are involved in buying the debt, they get involved in this derivatives market, and they say, well, if we don't bail them out, they'll all go bankrupt. Well, that's what they should do. Free market and sell money. If you want to clean up the mess and have jobs again, you have to say, well, how did we get into this mess? We had too much government intervention, we had too much spending, too much debt, too much free money, and too much interference with regulation. So if we got into that mess systematically and consistently over decades, we have to stop it. But the real financial bubble that we're working in trying to resolve right now started in 1971. That is when there was the last link of our dollar to anything sound like gold. It was removed, which gave license to the big spenders across the political spectrum. And they were always compromising. They said, we need more compromise in Washington. We don't need more compromise in Washington. What we do is bring people together, people of different political persuasions, people of different political parties, people who have different personal habits, people who would like to spend their money differently. Because the whole